My coworker turns the office into his own personal chaos. I work in an accounting office where most of my colleagues are friendly and professional. However, there is one colleague, whom I will call Mark, who frequently tests everyone's patience with his inconvenient habits. Mark has the habit of speaking loudly on the phone. It doesn't matter if it is a personal or work call. His voice echoes throughout the open office space, making it difficult to concentrate. Many of us have kindly asked him to speak more quietly, but he always responds that this is how he talks, and that he can't change. Another issue is how he manages his meetings. Mark will schedule meetings without checking everyone's availability, assuming that everyone will be free. When people can't attend, he shows frustration and makes passive-aggressive comments, which creates an uncomfortable environment. Additionally, he rarely cleans up after using the shared kitchen. He leaves dirty dishes in the sink and food scraps on the table, expecting someone else to clean up. This is not only disrespectful to colleagues, but also attracts insects and creates an unpleasant common area for everyone. The situation has reached the point where some people prefer to work from home more days during the week to avoid these frustrations. Management had to intervene by sending general emails about office etiquette, clearly directed at Mark. But he seems to ignore these hints. These small but persistent inconveniences continue to affect the team's morale. There have been no significant changes in Mark's behavior despite management's efforts. People have adapted as best they can, with some working more from home and others simply using headphones to block out the noise. Everyone is hoping that something changes soon. Story 2.
My ex's girlfriend wants to be the mother of my children. I am a 29-year-old woman and I dated a man named Joe for 3 months. Our relationship ended when he decided to go back to his ex-girlfriend, Kim. Shortly after our breakup, I found out I was pregnant, and now I am 24 weeks along. When I told Joe about the pregnancy, he was extremely happy since Kim had fertility problems and probably couldn't have children naturally. Joe always wanted to be a father. We both knew getting back together wasn't an option, so he stayed with Kim. Due to the isolation restrictions, Joe could only attend the first prenatal consultation with me. It was during this consultation that we discovered I was expecting twins. When he shared the news with Kim, she had an emotional breakdown due to her fertility problems and expressed a desire to talk to me. I visited their house, where Kim insisted on being involved in my pregnancy since she would be the stepmother of the children. She started making demands, such as a home birth and that I feed the babies with formula instead of breastfeeding them. For those who don't know, using formula means feeding the babies with artificial milk instead of breast milk. Kim wanted this so that they could keep the babies during the week without depending on breastfeeding. She even wanted to decide what the babies would be called and that they would call her mom as well. I interrupted her, saying that I would do what was best for my children and my body, and left. The situation with Kim began to intensify after that. No matter how much I tried to set clear boundaries, she always found a way to get more involved than necessary. Kim began sending daily messages about my diet and exercises, complaining that her job didn't allow for maternity leave and that, therefore, she needed to know everything to be prepared when the babies arrived. It was frustrating and invasive. I tried to explain to Joe that Kim's attitude was making me uncomfortable, but he seemed to be stuck between us, trying to please both, without success. During a routine consultation, Kim showed up unannounced. She insisted on entering the exam room, claiming she had the right to be present as the future stepmother. The doctor allowed her to stay, but the situation was extremely uncomfortable. Kim asked several questions about the baby's development and even suggested that I should consider a home birth so she could be more involved. I explained that I preferred to give birth in the hospital, where I would feel safer. Kim didn't like the response, but couldn't do much more than give disapproving looks. Joe suggested that Kim go in his place to the 20-week consultation, where one guest was allowed. I refused, explaining that I needed the support of the father of my children at that important moment. Joe understood, but Kim was extremely irritated with the decision. She began sending passive-aggressive messages, suggesting that I was trying to distance her from the babies. This attitude only increased my determination to maintain my independence and do what was best for my children. When I announced my pregnancy on social media, Kim quickly made a post saying they were expecting twins in a non-traditional way and felt blessed. I was irritated but didn't respond publicly. However, in a private conversation with Joe, I made it clear that Kim was crossing important boundaries and that this needed to stop. He promised to talk to her, but it seemed that his words had little effect. Kim organized a gender reveal party and didn't even invite me. She also announced a baby shower, which she planned to hold without my presence. That was the breaking point for me. On social media, I commented that she should stop treating me like a surrogate and that the babies were not hers. This comment generated a lot of discussion among friends and family, but I felt I needed to set clear boundaries. After that, I called Joe and made it clear that nothing would be resolved without court intervention and that my mother would be my companion at the birth. The tension increased even more when Kim's mother called me, insisting that I give one of my babies to her. I found the suggestion completely absurd and inhumane. I decided that I needed a lawyer as soon as possible. After posting about my situation, I contacted the police and got a restraining order against Joe. My lawyer informed me that he couldn't do anything about custody until the babies were born, which left me even more worried. I thought about leaving the state to avoid more problems. The weeks that followed were tense and full of uncertainties. Kim's constant presence in my life and her insistence on being involved in all the decisions related to my pregnancy were affecting my mental health. I started having trouble sleeping and my anxiety increased considerably. That's when I decided to seek professional help to deal with the stress. I talked to a therapist, who helped me find ways to deal with the situation without getting overwhelmed. My intention to leave the state solidified after Kim vandalized my car and broke the windows at my work. This act of violence confirmed that I needed a restraining order against her to protect my safety and that of my children. Kim was arrested for criminal damage and endangering children, which I hope will help in my legal battle. With Kim's arrest, I felt temporary relief, but I knew the battle was far from over. I continued to document all interactions and incidents related to Kim and Joe, building a solid case for when the babies were born. Joe tried to remain neutral, but his inability to control the situation was causing more harm than he realized. My conversations with him became rarer and more formal, focused only on the baby's well-being and the legal issues we needed to resolve. Meanwhile, people around me started to notice what was happening. Friends and neighbors offered support, some even offering to help me move to another state. Their support was crucial in keeping me strong and focused on what needed to be done. My mother, who had always been by my side, became my biggest ally. She accompanied me to all consultations and helped me deal with the turbulent emotions this situation generated. Finally, the day of my children's birth arrived. My mother was by my side in the delivery room, offering the support and love I needed at that moment. It was a difficult birth, but when I heard my baby's cries for the first time, I felt a wave of relief and happiness. They were healthy, and that was all that mattered. After the birth, I continued to avoid contact with Joe and Kim, focusing all my attention on my children. I obtained a permanent restraining order against Kim, which gave me a bit more peace. Even so, I knew the custody battle was still to come. My lawyer was prepared to fight for my rights and ensure that my children stayed with me. The whole situation taught me that sometimes it is necessary to take firm measures to protect what is ours. With the restraining orders in place and a competent lawyer by my side, I feel that I am finally taking control of the situation. Despite the difficulties, I am determined to ensure a safe and loving environment for my babies, away from the toxic influences of Kim and the pressure from Joe and his family.